Hello and welcome to the Dinkum Arsenal podcast. I am your host Jacob, and today we're going to be discussing the poor result against Bate Borisov in the Europa League. The team that we fielded was 100% more than enough to get the job done, but I also want to speak a little bit about my thoughts on the Mesut Ozil situation and whether or not I think he should be starting, or at least be in and around the team. But first of all, let's speak about the game, which was the 1-0 loss to Bate Borisov. The back three, for me, wasn't as much as an issue as I've seen a lot of people complain about, saying that it is relatively too defensive. But, I mean, it saw our wing-backs bomb on, which was effective in the way that Kolasinac and Ainsley Maitland-Niles sort of connected with Mkhitaryan and Iwobi, getting the cutbacks, which ultimately saw us create the opening chance for Mkhitaryan, which he probably should have scored, but I mean, he was stretching, so I'm not really sure what else he could have done. But also, Kolasinac created the chance for Lacazette, which he did put in the back of the net, which was rightfully called offside. But technically, this is a poor Arsenal side, which is something we're not used to seeing since Arsene Wenger used to pick really technical players like Santi Cazorla and even Olivier Giroud. Even though he was a lamp pole, he was undeniably very technically good and saw our build-up play come through him quite a lot. But I think overall, this makes us play really slow and allows the teams to set up defensively due to us having multiple touches. For example, look at the first chance that Mickey should have scored. We had pretty much two touch in the build-up. Iwobi finding a really nice pass to Kolasinac and Kolasinac hitting it first time to Mickey. Like I said at the beginning, he was sort of stretching for the shot. I don't really know what else he could have done. The keeper came out well and made himself big, so even though it was disappointing not to score there and ultimately it would have changed the trajectory of the game in our favour, it was a bit unfortunate, but I mean, that was in the first, minute and a half or so, and honestly, it's still very worrying that we cannot create chances in the second half. We lack so much creativity, but we don't have a plan B like we did with Giroud. The injury to Welbeck is honestly quite unfortunate, as he sort of brings us a plan B with his versatility and his hard work. He hasn't been as effective in past seasons, but this season he really hit the ground running with Emery's system, and the fact that he can play along any of the front three and slot into those roles through the game made our attack not only more potent but also a lot more unpredictable. And I think just having the third option of a striker who is sort of a mix between Aubameyang and Lacazette is a big loss, and not replacing him in January or finding someone like Eddie Nketiah, who I think should have gotten a chance, and just not replacing him was a big mistake, and I think we're paying for it, much like with the Hector Bellerin injury. Now that we haven't replaced him, we're putting a lot of responsibility on Ainsley Maitland-Niles to fill that void and sort of play a position that he's not really comfortable playing in, and we're basically just put a big burden on him since we have no one else to fill that role. I also think our midfield setup was wrong. I think we have too many transition players and deep laying playmakers, but none of them actually get past the striker, or none of them go into the box like, say, a Ramsey or an Ozil would. Therefore, there was no one in the box when we were trying to build up play and look for people to cross it to, which basically resulted in the way that we used to play, which was the old horseshoe football where we sort of passed it around the edge of the box and we just couldn't seem to pick out the cross because, one, nobody's in there, and two, we don't have people who are technically good. And so this made our attack super lackluster, and I have a feeling that the lack of creativity could be linked to Emery's tactics, as it seems like he wants to attack via the wingbacks and the fullbacks, but we seem to suffer if we don't get that right. So coming back to not having a plan B, if Kolasinac and Ainsley Maitland-Niles aren't finding anybody with their cutbacks and we're not flooding the box for anyone to get onto those cutbacks, then we have no other real outlet to get any goals or to create any chances. The stats suggest that the only way of creating is through pretty much Kolasinac on the left wing, as Kolasinac's XG and XA, as well as his big chances created, are the best in the squad for creativity. it is worrying that we are putting in poor performances, especially in what is going to be such an important time to get ourselves into the top 4 and also to progress ourselves through the Europa League. We really need to have both avenues open until the very end, so at least we can sort of give us a better chance to get back into the Champions League, which is going to be important for the big rebuild that's coming in the summer. But I think this ties in perfectly with the second point that I wanted to speak about on this podcast, which was my thoughts on Ozil. I really think he can help us get back into the top 4, and I think he can play a big part in getting us to the Europa League final. I honestly think he should just play more games where he's suited to, and the others that he's not suited to, we should at least have him on the bench for an impact sub. I know he sort of doesn't work well as a substitute, but even just having him there to bring on at halftime, I think we'll see a lot of value in what he can bring to the team. I mean, we haven't seen him play in such a long time, and I know a lot of people will point out that he didn't have a good game against Cardiff, but I mean, I honestly didn't think he played well. He retained the ball very good, and technically he's superior to anyone that we have on our team. He respects the ball and he doesn't hand it and doesn't lose the ball in dangerous areas, which we see Xhaka, Guendouzi, as well as Ainsley Maitland-Niles and Kolasinac do. Thus, we're not under as much pressure and we can spend more time in the opponent's half, and therefore we can create more chances. At the end of the day, he's a playmaker, which is exactly what the team is missing. You only have to look at our recent performances and the stats going into them. Manchester City, we didn't create anything. Huddersfield, we only created in the first half and we hardly created anything in the second half. You look at Bate Borisov, I mean, you can even go back and watch the highlights. All the highlights are primarily from the first half. I think there's literally only the red card in the second half as a highlight. I can't even remember any clear-cut chance besides the offside goal that Lacazette scored. So I think it's just silly not to include him. Many say that we need to get over Ozil and his situation, and I can understand that, but he's not going to budge. So I think that we may as well try and incorporate him into the team. And obviously we don't know what's going on behind the scenes and how he's training, but there's a good chance that even if he were training well and giving 100% to the team, from what the reports say and what they seem to suggest is that Emery has taken a massive power stance regardless, which stems from his tenure as the PSG manager and his torrid time that he had with Neymar. But Ozil doesn't strike me as the type of guy who would go directly to the club president, or I guess now that would be Raul Sanllehi, since he's overlooking pretty much everything at the club. Doesn't strike me that Ozil would be that type of guy to go to him. So I think that there's a good chance that Emery is literally just holding him out to make a point to the rest of the squad. All I'm saying is that he's so technically good that pretty much 9 times out of 10, he retains the ball and he creates so many opportunities, as we all can see the stats. I also believe that his presence scares teams in the way that Lacazette and Auba do, which I'm sure many of you won't agree with. But if we line up with Lacazette and Auba with Mesut Ozil behind them, I can guarantee you a lot of teams will be frightened by that. I mean, we have a world-class playmaker as well as world-class strikers. Couldn't think of too many teams who wouldn't be scared of that trio. Well, I understand that we have to cater to play him in his position. I think his pros outweigh his cons in that he can provide something out of nothing. Even if there's only one clear-cut chance that he can provide per game, that's still a clear-cut chance that we're not providing in like the last few months that he's been out of the team. And yes, I agree that he's inconsistent, but I think this whole team is. And I know we like to laud Aubameyang and Lacazette as world-class centre forwards, but they too miss their fair share of chances. And they can also be pretty anonymous. I think that the situation that surrounds Ozil, as well as his so-called body language, and the fact that he's been here for so long, leads us to use him as a scapegoat. I mean, every time I watch him play, I can see the pass that he should make, and almost every time he makes the correct pass. His game awareness and knowledge are unrivaled by anyone in the team, and honestly, he's our best player, so I mean, why not play him, if not every week, at least here and there? I think to not even include him in the squad is wrong. I mean, you put Ramsey in the squad, he can come on and make an impact, and I honestly think Ozil can come on and do a job. He now hasn't played for a few months, so I think that when he does play, he might need a few run of games to get back into it, and if he can sort of play in his favoured number 10 position, then I really do think he can get us back into the top 4, and I really think we can go deep in the Europa League with him in the squad. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on the game, as well as my thoughts on Mesut Ozil and the whole situation surrounding him. For those of you who took the time to listen, I do thank you again. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. And if you found me on Twitter, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss when I release some more of my podcasts. If you guys do have any feedback you could give to me or want to chat about the game, don't be afraid to let me know. And as always, thanks for listening. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.